Non-praxeological schools of thought mistakenly believe that relationships between certain events are well-established empirical laws when they are really necessary and logical praxeological ones, and they thereby behave as if the statement, "a ball cannot be red and non-red all over at the same time," requires testing in Europe, America, Africa, Asia, and Australia, of course, requiring a lot of funds in order to pay for such daring, nonsensical research. Moreover, the non-praxeologists also believe that relationships between certain events are well-established empirical laws with predictive implications, when a priori reasoning can show them to be no more than information regarding contingent historical connections between events, which does not provide us with any knowledge whatsoever regarding the future course of events. This illustrates another fundamental confusion non-Austrian schools have, a confusion over the categorical difference between theory and history and the implication that this difference has for the problem of social and economic forecasting. I must again begin with a description of empiricism, the philosophy which thinks of economics and the social sciences in general as following the same logic of research as that, for instance, of physics. I will explain why. According to empiricism, today's most widely held view of economics, there is no categorical difference between theoretical and historical research. And I will explain what this implies for the idea of social forecasting. The very different Austrian view will then be developed out of a critique and refutation of the empiricist position. Empiricism is characterized by the fact that it accepts two intimately related basic propositions. The first and most central one is knowledge regarding reality, which is called empirical knowledge, must be verifiable or at least falsifiable by observational experience. Observational experience can only lead to contingent knowledge as opposed to necessary knowledge, because it is always of such a kind that in principle it could have been different than it actually was. This means that no one can know in advance of experience, that is before actually having had some particular observational experience, if the consequence of some real event will be one way or another. If, on the other hand, knowledge is not verifiable or falsifiable by observational experience, then it is not knowledge about anything real. It is simply knowledge about words, about the use of terms, about signs, and transformational rules for signs. That is to say, it is analytical knowledge, but not empirical knowledge. And it is highly doubtful, according to this view, that analytical knowledge should be regarded as knowledge at all. The second assumption of empiricism formulates the extension and application of the first assumption to problems of causality, causal explanation, and prediction. According to empiricism, to explain causally or predict a real phenomenon is to formulate a statement of either the type if A, then B, or should the variables allow quantitative measurement, if an increase, decrease in A, then an increase, decrease in B. As a statement referring to reality, with A and B being real phenomena, its validity can never be established with certainty. That is, by examining the proposition alone or of any other proposition from which the one in question could be logically deduced. The statement will always be and always remain hypothetical, its veracity depending on the outcome of future observational experiences, which cannot be known in advance. Should experience confirm a hypothetical causal explanation, this would not prove that the hypothesis was true. Should one observe an instance where B indeed followed A as predicted, it verifies nothing. A and B are general abstract terms. or in philosophical terminology, universals, which refer to events and processes of which there are, or might be in principle, an indefinite number of instances. Later experiences could still possibly falsify it. And if an experience falsified a hypothesis, this would not be decisive either. At the most, falsification only proves that the particular hypothesis under investigation was not completely correct as it stood. It needs some refinement, some specification of additional variables which have to be watched for and controlled so that we might observe the hypothesized relationship between A and B. But, to be sure, a falsification would never prove once and for all that a relationship between some given phenomena did not exist, just as a confirmation would never definitively prove that it did exist. When we consider this position, we notice that it again implies a denial of a priori knowledge that is at the same time knowledge about anything real. Any proposition that claims to be a priori can, according to empiricism, be no more than signs on paper that are related to each other by definition or by arbitrary stipulation, and is thus completely void. It is without connection to the world of real things whatsoever. Such a system of signs only becomes an empirically meaningful theory once an empirical interpretation is given to its symbols. Yet, as soon as such an interpretation is given to its symbols, the theory is no longer a priori true, but rather becomes and remains forever hypothetical.